Hey guys, Bill here. Quick video. Answering a question really about just the energy efficiency of homes, our preferences and how we heat and cool a space, considerations you can make, and what you guys can go ahead and do to upgrade your place when you're doing a remodel or a renovation. Um, this is a big topic, and there's a lot of different factors. And as of right now, depending on your situation and just what technology holds in the future, I can guarantee that 90% of this, I can guarantee within 90% certainty that this is going to change. So just take that with what it is. The technology on how things have evolved over the last 10 years even is incredible in the construction space. We'll use the topic of windows actually, for example. So these windows behind me are actually single pane windows. They were installed here in this home around like 1950-ish, we think. 1950, 1955, somewhere between there. But what's interesting is they're actually older. These windows are from Fort Ethan Allen, the firing range and military base around the corner in Jericho. They were probably made in 1930. Now, these single pane windows are almost 100 years old. Like, that's incredible. Um, the kicker is that most of them don't operate anymore, so they've been sealed shut over the years. They are really not a comfortable window for your home, so there's tons of condensation, like when it's really, really cold or this time of the year when it's snowing and melting. And also too, like it's just aesthetically, it's not as pleasing as we're used to, right? There's lots of panes in the glass. The glass is generally smaller for the most part. There's a few exceptions, obviously, but that's just the general rule of thumb. These were never meant to be energy efficient. These were never meant to be like a really comfortable window for your home. But they were made for the US military and they will last forever. Okay, so kind of think about that in the back of your head. Would I want these windows in my house? Probably not. They probably make a really good retrofit, let's just say, in a particular instance, or if you had a sunroom or something like that. But single pane windows, I mean, I know of maybe one company down south that's still making them, and they're putting some crazy glazing on them to really make them work down there. But they have to deal more with heat. We don't have to worry about that up here. So, I mean, single, triple, or you're even seeing quadruple panes of glass, or you're seeing, which is kind of cool from Canada, some really thick assemblies of glass. It's many layers of glass with a film that's put between them. It's really to keep the cold out. I mean, seriously, that's what it is. And this house over this past winter was freezing, and we had the heat cranking in here just to keep our sealants and our paints and everything from like freezing and going bad. So that's just one example of energy efficiency. There's a lot of different things just on the topic of windows. I think that's one thing a lot of people want to get redone in their homes. So let's dive into that a little bit more. Typically with North American construction in the Northeast, you see a lot of double hung windows. I'm personally not a fan of them. I try to get clients to switch away from double hungs. The reason that they're popular is they're cheaper. So that just is what it is. What you could always do if you don't really operate the window at all, or if you don't have to worry about an egress or anything like that, is you could get a fixed window and just single pane fixed. There is one up behind me right there. It's a larger picture window. You know, single pane piece of glass, larger, it'll last the test of time, especially if it doesn't have to operate. The other thing you can go ahead and do is get like a casement or an awning window. Interestingly enough, these are actually casement windows behind me. The reason I really like a casement window, and that's what we did for our house, we have a couple awnings thrown in there too, but it gives us a really tight mechanical seal. So if you think of a double hung window or a single hung window where it just goes straight up and down, and you have a little tiny lever on top where you lock in, it might press it down a touch, but it's not a lot of force. Let's just use the casement for example. When you have a casement and it swings shut, right? So you're closing it, and it's already got a decent seal right there when you crank the mechanism. Those one or possibly two levers, when you push those in, it gives the entire assembly just that much more of a seal. The other nice thing about casement windows is that as long as the glass is good, you can repair them almost indefinitely. So you can get new hardware for the mechanisms, you can get new weather stripping going around it. If it's wood and it rots out, you could repair it if you wanted to. It might be worth it just to get a new window, but just think about that long term where they're almost like a lifetime kind of thing. You're going to pay more for it though. So just be aware of that, like what you really want to do with that space. Um, the other great example besides a casement, which closes kind of like this, where it just is an awning window where it comes open and down. Um, that's a really good window to have if you don't have huge overhangs and you're worried about water getting into the house. If it was coming down at a slight angle, it's going to hit that glass and just run right down. And so on my own home, personally, my own personal home, we use both, depending kind of where you were in the space. And so which one made more sense, how to catch the breeze from the house, stuff like that, just the aesthetics of it. But those are pretty much my two go-to if we can. Now, there are considerations to make with that in the sense that you can't always get that size, or it might be cost prohibitive to get that in that size, or it could be a custom order. But more than often than not, I think clients that have done it and invested in those windows have been super happy with them. I can't think of one person that said, "Oh, I really wish I went with a double hung instead." Every person I've talked to who has them said they're great. They just have less problems, and if there is a problem, you can generally fix it pretty easily. So it's not like it's like you have to rip the whole thing out and redo it. So yeah, that's really the topic of windows. As far as like energy efficiency with, let's just say, we've got windows, doors are pretty similar. Let's just say insulation, for example. We could be talking about the insulation in the walls, the attic insulation. Those are the two primary ones that we kind of tackle. What we tend to do is go ahead and just do a sweep of the room with a thermal imaging camera, and we look for any hot and or cold spots depending on the time of the year. Many times, believe it or not, it's not worth it to actually go ahead and tear apart the wall to then re-insulate it. There's usually a few bad spots. And if it's a bad spot, or on my house, it was missing insulation in a few spots, they just decided to not do it or not put it in, then we would go ahead and address that, obviously. But generally speaking, to tear apart a whole wall assembly just to focus on one or two spots, it's just not worth it. The nice thing about thermal imaging cameras is we can find the problem areas and then kind of, laser focus on those points. So that is a service we provide, which is kind of cool up here. The other thing too, especially with your attic insulation, is that homes these days are built much tighter, which I'm a huge fan of. You need to take into consideration how tight a house is and how it's mechanically ventilated, because that is an issue. If you seal a house up, right, and you're living in like a bubble per se, and you don't have the necessary oxygen or air movement coming in or out of the home, like you're gonna have problems. So you really need to consider just how you're going to go about and do that. One way is an ERV, and so that brings in fresh air, filters it, and brings it out. We're getting that installed in our house this coming fall. There's that way to do it. There's a lot of different ways to do it, and that's the thing too, is that this technology is going to change so quickly that if you watch this in a few years from now, this might not be relevant anymore. Because the industry is constantly evolving and getting better as we go. There are many different ways to tighten the house up. There's our preferred methods. Like we try and stay away from spray foam for many reasons. Part of it's just the cost. It's terrible for the environment. They are changing the formula, so I'm sure it will be better in a year or two. But as it stands right now, it's pretty toxic for the environment, and it releases a ton of greenhouse gases. So will we use spray foam? Yeah, we will. A very, very small amount, and it has to be a particular circumstance. You usually see it in a can for us. But again, I'm not a huge proponent of going and spraying a whole house with it. It just doesn't seem to stand the test of time as far as the movement of the house and staying tight and all that. And it's the most expensive type of installation there is. So you kind of have to weigh that option. But yeah, that's really it for this topic. I'm going to cover, I think in the next one, just more of the green building science, we'll call it. Again, there's many, many schools of thought on this. So I could talk about this for days. So if you guys have any comments, questions, concerns, anything you want me to cover, feel free to go ahead and leave it down in the comments. Let me know if you have any questions or if what you think about the video, really. So yeah, guys, that's it. We'll talk soon. And yeah, look forward to seeing you on the next one.